Hi, so we are here at the Pennsylvania historical marker for Simon Girty. He lived 1741 to 1818. He was a frontiersman known as the Great Renegade, was born nearby, captured by Indians 1756. He lived among the Senecas and learned their language and culture. Following his release, he became an interpreter for the American Army, deserted in 1778, afterwards led British and Native American war parties against frontier settlements. Hostile to the U.S. in the War of 1812, regarded as a loyalist by some and a white savage by others, he remains controversial, and he died in Canada.
So the story of Simon Girty begins in November 14th, 1741, when he was born, and went till February 18th, 1818, when he passed away in Canada. He is sometimes referred to as Catamacoman, which was his Native American name because he spent quite a bit of time with the Native Americans, and that was probably his fondest times were with the Native Americans. He was an American colonial of Irish descent, born there in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He also served as a liaison between the British and their Indian allies during the American Revolution. Mostly he is portrayed as a villain, but it's not as simple as, like, say, the story of Benedict Arnold, which there are, even in Benedict Arnold's case, there are reasons to some degree why he did what he did, and there are reasons why Simon Girty went the direction in which he went. As children, Girty and his brothers were taken captive in Pennsylvania in a Seneca raid, and they were adopted. And he lived with the Senecas for 7 years, became fully assimilated. He also was known to have preferred their culture. But at the end of the war, after Pontiac's War, part of the conditions were that the prisoners of war would be returned to their families, which he was. But he always retained a sympathy for the Indians. Simon Girty's father, Simon Girty Sr., when he came to America, to the colonies, wanted to start a trading post, and he started it there off the Sherman Creek, I believe, which was on the Susquehanna River. But unfortunately, that was an area that the British authorities did not want anyone building, so they were arrested, and the trading post, their home, and everything that went with it was burnt down. They were charged and had a bond of 500 pounds each and were bound for trial. Simon Girty's father, unfortunately, was killed in a duel. He fought a man called Samuel Sanders, or Saunders, and I guess when they dueled with pistols, they both misfired. They pulled out their swords. Basically, Simon Girty Sr. tripped and was run through by the other man, who eventually was caught, convicted. He was tried and convicted for manslaughter and was imprisoned. There is another tale that they say supposedly that an Indian named the Fish murdered him with a tomahawk, and later his half-brother John Turner retaliated and got revenge, killing the Fish. But that's probably a lot less likely that that's true. Unfortunately, Simon Girty Sr.'s property was taken by two men who was very fraudulent activity to take that and really hurt the family. Simon Girty Jr., who we're talking about, his mother married this John Turner, who wound up building a farm right nearby where their home had been. But when the French and Indian War started, this was one of the most dangerous areas, so he moved his family, the John Turner, moved them all to Fort Granville. John Turner joined the local militia, was made a sergeant, and was under Captain Edward Ward, and he was a third in command. Unfortunately, their fort, came under attack by French forces and the Lenape, and they were forced to surrender. For some reason, John Turner was not liked by the Indians, whether this story was true about him killing the Fish, and they ultimately tortured him to death in a really horrible way, and the family was forced to watch. One of Simon Girty's brothers actually escaped, so they split the rest of the families amongst the different tribes. and Simon Girty was taken in by a chief named Gayasuta, who was of a Seneca tribe called the Mingos, and he lived in a village near Lake Erie for the next 7 years. Simon Girty regained their respect after running the gauntlet successfully, and he very much lived like a Native American. He adopted their philosophies, he preferred that lifestyle, and he very much was part of a lot of, like Conrad Weiser, he was very well trusted by the Native American tribes, so he was involved with a lot of negotiations and things of that nature. He did a lot of good. At the end of the French and Indian War, part of it was that these prisoners of war had to be returned. So he was, and wasn't necessarily favorable of it, but he went back to his family. In the American Revolution, he actually served the American side, but eventually became disillusioned during certain campaigns. There was a family of a man called Johnny Logan, who was a Mingo war leader, and his family were murdered. And he ultimately and several other colonists joined the British forces in Detroit and fought against, or fought for the Loyalists, for the British crown. He fought in several other campaigns as well, on the side of the Indians ordinarily, and was really beloved by the Native American tribes. There are several different accounts that they talk about him being involved in the War of 1812. None of it was true. They actually said he got killed with one of the famous Native American chiefs. Once again, wasn't true. He was around 60 years old. He had moved to Canada by this time, up in Ontario, and his arthritis was really bad, and he was going blind. Now, his one son actually got killed on the side of the British, but he never fought. He had to, there for a while during the war, they had to move northwards because of the attacks going on. And eventually he moved back to his farm, and over time he eventually, in 1818, he wound out passing away. Just from everything that had gone on, his health was just really in a bad place. Unfortunately for him, he is presented in a lot of modern works of fiction as a complete villain. And in certain ways, yes, I guess you can look at it that way, but there were reasons. He really loved the Native Americans, and he had a great respect for them and saw the atrocities that were done to them. Also, one good thing that I found out about him, number of time when the American soldiers were captured, they would be tortured and killed. He stopped that from happening. In fact, he paid for their freedom out of his own pocket. So he's one of those individuals that's probably in a lot of ways is misunderstood. There are obviously things there you could say about being a traitor and that type of stuff, but he also had been treated very, very poorly. So it's understandable where he came from, but intriguing character of history. We'll see all about town.